April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. We're going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy.
President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs are another large step towards a new, old era of trade protectionism. Assuming the policy sticks, the effort amounts to an attempt to remake the US economy and the world trading system.
Foreign nations will finally be asked to pay for the privilege of access to our market, the biggest market in the world.
All US trading partners have been hit with a baseline 10% tariff, with additional higher rates for those Mr. Trump calls bad actors. China's been hit with a 34% tariff, India 26%, Japan 24%, and the European Union 20%. Already, China has announced retaliatory tariffs of 34% starting April 10th.
The initial response globally is shock, and I think there are two reasons for that surprise. One is the enormous economic transformation that President Trump's tariffs are attempting to bring about. I mean, America has just spent the past 7 or 8 decades trying to build a global economy that was built on steady progress toward trade opening, and now that's moving in reverse.
The 80-year period when the United States embraced the mantle of global economic leadership, when it forged alliances rooted in trust and mutual respect, and championed the free and open exchange of goods and services, is over.
And then there's also the political angle, because countries felt like they were integrating their economies with the U.S. as part of developing closer political relationships with America.
Our old relationship of steadily deepening integration with the United States is over.
Speaking on Fox News, J.D. Vance said that for the past 40 years, America has gone down a globalist pathway, which has led to closing factories, rising inflation, and a housing crisis.
What has the globalist economy gotten the United States of America? And the answer is fundamentally it's based on two principles: incurring a huge amount of debt to buy things that other countries make for us. And to make it a little bit more crystal clear, we borrow money from Chinese peasants to buy the things those Chinese peasants manufacture. That is not a recipe for economic prosperity.
I think what Vice President Vance really seems to be unhappy about here, and this is pretty common for a lot of people in the protectionist camp, is basically that the U.S. economy has continued to grow and evolve over the past 40 years in the same way that it had done for the 2 centuries before that. The American economy has never been a static target. It has always been changing and developing, and I think that process has always been difficult for some people, but on balance, the result has always been more prosperity for more people, and the result of that is that now, after this awful 40 years that J.D. Vance is upset about, America remains the most prosperous country the world has ever known.
I agree with President Trump that others are taking unfair advantage of the current rules, and I'm ready to support any efforts to make the global trading system fit for the realities of the global economy. Reaching for tariffs as your first and last tool will not fix it.
The day after Mr. Trump's so-called reciprocal tariffs announcement, the stock market suffered its worst day of trading since the government shut down the economy in March of 2020. Then there's the bizarre slapdash way that the White House calculated the tariffs on individual countries.
What are countries' tariffs? What are their non-tariff barriers? What is their currency manipulation? And how much do they subsidize labor and borrowings?
The discordant result is that US adversaries like Iran and Venezuela will pay lower rates than friends like Europe, Japan, and Taiwan.
There has not been any thought about the many, many, many instances where the U.S. and especially American households benefit enormously from being able to import products from the rest of the world at affordable prices. And these are foods that we couldn't grow in the U.S., products that we couldn't manufacture affordably in the U.S., and households have been the winner from that. And the protectionists think this is a bad thing because they see trade only in the very crudest terms. Where do we have a deficit? Where do we have a surplus? And if there's a deficit, they think that it must be a sign that some kind of shenanigans are going on. But that's just not true.
The message from the Trump administration:
sit back, take it in, let's see how it goes, because if you retaliate, there will be escalation. If you don't retaliate, this is the high watermark.
The joint resolutions passed.
On April 2nd, the Senate passed a resolution to reverse the 25% tariffs on Canadian imports after President Trump announced his Liberation Day tariffs. 4 Republicans crossed the aisle to vote with Democrats on the measure that doesn't alter the president's directive, but is a useful gauge to see where the Senate's opinion lies with tariffs.
Tariffs are simply taxes. Tariffs don't punish foreign governments, they punish American families. When we tax imports, we raise the price of everything, from groceries to smartphones to washing machines to prescription drugs. Every dollar collected in tariff revenue comes straight out of the pockets of American consumers.
When Mr. Trump outlined his 6-point economic plan last September, he said that he would use tariffs to encourage production here in the US and to create a manufacturing and defense base. But political leaders may have imagined their initiation would play out differently.
There seems to be no order in the disorder.
It's chaotic. He says one thing one day and another thing the next day. He changes which countries, he changes the percentage, he changes which goods.
It turns out the little disturbance that Mr. Trump alluded to in his speech to Congress in March
There'll be a little disturbance.
might not be as little as he imagines.
It won't be much.
I mean, the tariffs are definitely a big economic policy risk for the Trump administration, but we have to remember they're also a big political risk. Now, it's true that he campaigned on this. Tariffs are one of the things that he has been very consistent on throughout his political career, and it was a theme of his first term, trade protectionism. But I think that there's a real question about whether the voters understood that they were going to get protectionism to this degree. And he also has made a bunch of promises about what these tariffs would accomplish in terms of bringing manufacturing back on shore in the US and creating well-paying jobs and greater prosperity. If it turns out that he's wrong about that, and there is a lot of evidence in economic history that he is, I think that we have to brace for the fact that Republicans in Congress are facing voters in a midterm election in just about a year and a half now. That is not a lot of time for anyone to prove that this policy can deliver the sort of prosperity that President Trump has been promising.